Mr. Kalish, please take a roll.
Brewer,
Yep.
Seep, Glassburner, Miller, Gentis,
Here.
Turk, Cosgrove, Frank, Fleming.
Here.
You have a quorum, 5 out of 9.
We have a 12-point agenda. There was proof of notification.
Yes, sir, the
We
meeting
have
is
a
properly
12-point
noticed.
agenda. Can I have a motion?
Was.
Ventus, seconded by Cosgrove, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We have a agenda. Approval of the October 5th, 2023, October 5th minutes. Do I have a motion or do we have any changes? If not, I'll simply declare those approved as published. Discussion possible action, reassignment of Fair and Recycling Oversight Committee. Administrator Pesh.
Okay, so as you know, when Carla left, the Fair Committee has been meeting and has been talking about how we move forward and what that's going to look like and all those various things. And one of the things that came out in those discussions is that the Fair and the Parks Committee was forced together, and the members of those committees are not happy about it. The parks people really don't want anything to do with the fair. The fair people really don't want anything to do with the parks. And so in the spirit of trying to ensure that what we're doing is actually productive and makes sense, you know, we're looking to transition all of the fair and parks recycling duties under Public Works. And there will be a position created it would be called Parks, Trails and Maintenance. And that would take care of the mowing of the parks, the maintenance of the trails, some snow removal, assisting Randy in the off seasons, all of those things. And then would be supervised under Randy and Josh. And they're trying to determine then what that would look like for the fair staffing. But before we can get there, we really need to take care of the structure. And so they're asking that the Fair, Parks and Recycling Committee be moved under Public Works, and that we then separate out the Fair and Recycling and Parks into two separate. So it's a multi-layered.
Who's asking?
The Fair Committee. Yes.
You explain when you separate out, you mean like they would be under that umbrella but still meet a little bit separate?
Separate subcommittees.
Okay. So
Yes.
you have subcommittees.
It would be
That's what I didn't
separate
understand.
subcommittees. It would
Okay.
still be all under the Public Works
Yeah.
umbrella. And it would actually streamline it a little bit since Josh is under Public Works and you've got Josh and the committee for all the decisions anyway. It flows pretty well. And so that's what they're requesting. Now, we can do this now, or we can look at it as we look at the whole restructuring of committees, period. But it's a discussion that's being had, and I thought it was an important and relevant discussion to have here. And, you know, get any feedback, concerns, comments that you all have with that potential of doing that.
I just have a question. I've never been.
Go.
Here. I've never been on either one of those committees, but I have heard, you know, so it seems to me that I don't quite understand why they're not getting along, but you know, who knows? At the fairgrounds, we have a lot of camping sites and things, and we also have them at the parks. And it seems like they need to be coordinated about how that's charged and how it's on the website, how you can do all that. That there is a lot of, to me, overlap of doing that. So I just find it strange that they're not more meeting together. That would be my opinion. And so when you have subcommittees, would the chair then of the, how do you envision that? Like the Public Works chair would go to each of the subcommittees. So how do they keep communicating? And I think Marty's mentioned that we're trying to get all the mowing done by one, so I like that. So I just wasn't quite sure if I understood all that.
Yep, so that would all be under Josh. So those committees then would report to Well, right now, the head of the fair committee is Carrie Severson, the
Yes.
head of Fair and Parks. So they would then have to decide who the heads of their subcommittees would be. And then they would report, right now, Public Works, the head of Public Works Committee is Steve Williamson. And so how they would then, I would guess they would attend the Public Works Committee meeting whenever they have things to share or to run up the food chain, is how that would go. I mean, that's what I envision, but I'm very open to ideas and suggestions on this. And it's not that they're not getting along. I think it's just that when the restructuring of the committees happened, they felt as though they weren't consulted, the people that were actually members of the committees.
No, they weren't.
And they, you know, their interests don't necessarily lie in one or the other. As far as the parks being separated out from the fair, and the camping, that's going to all be managed by one person either way. But the committees they have differing goals. The fair people really just want to worry about putting on the fair and what happens at the fairgrounds. The parks people really want to see our trails developed. They want to see our parks maintained better. They want to see signage. So they just have different priorities is what I would say. And so they feel like they could focus more on the areas that they're concerned with and be more productive if they weren't having to sit through meetings talking about things that aren't really relevant to them.
Administrator Pesh, it isn't on our agenda, but I will ask you a question. Do you intend that several of the committees that we set up, for instance, pushing veteran affairs in with HHS? I've heard from Supervisor Seat on many occasions. All you did was take away our power. We're diluted. We're meaningless. That or other one would be child support and find that.
Correct. So that is on our agenda for discussion today on looking at our committee structure, because realistically, what we're seeing is our meetings are getting shorter, which is wonderful for the most part. There are a couple of committees that have long meetings, but overall, the last Public Works meeting was 16 minutes. HHS meetings are about 30 minutes now. So we're seeing, because information is flowing the way that it should and the work is being done prior to coming to committee, the way it should be being done, we're seeing those things shorten up. And so we're proposing a reduced committee structure. And so, yes, I do anticipate that we're going to see some shifts and some changes in the alignment of committees that appear to make a little more sense because they're more relative to one another.
But you're talking about a reduced committee structure, and yet you're talking about more subcommittees.
In this case, yes, they wish to be two subcommittees. If you tell them they have to be one, they're going to stay as one. We just may lose members because there are some that really don't want to have
Citizen members?
Yes, yes. So, you know, there are certain people that are very passionate about certain things. That's just the way that it is.
Mr.
But-
Chair,
Yes.
as far as separating those into two separate committees, I agree, because the fair people don't necessarily want to sit through all the park stuff, and the park people don't want to sit there with 3/4 of it is about the fair. I mean, it is good to potentially separate them, so that they can just focus on what they're, but again, then you got more subcommittees, so it is tough there, I see that. And also, as far as the public works, there was a very short meeting, the last one. Typically, they are anywhere from an hour and a half to 2.5 hours. So they are long, and then if you add in parks and fair in there, they are gonna be, in my opinion, probably a much longer meeting. But that's not that that's a bad thing, just an observation. I'm on that committee.
Yeah, right. And I mean, since I've been here, we haven't had a single long public
Yeah.
works meeting.
Yeah,
I mean, since July. Because I've been trying to track them. Derek and I have been kind of paying attention to them as we have this discussion on, okay, what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. And I think too, there are times, sure, you're gonna have a longer meeting because you have something
a lot of things on the agenda.
bigger on the agenda or that requires more discussion and I think it also depends on who the chair of the committee is and what kind of meeting they run and how involved they like to be in some of the decision making. So I think there are variables there.
I can see this working if the subcommittees are on a reporting basis.
Yeah, right.
You have the meeting, but you will not even hear from a particular subcommittee unless they have some reporting to do.
Well, and that could be part of the discussion on how that would flow and what it would look like. I mean, I think those are important discussions to have because we need to establish something that will actually work. But the feeling I got is that the last time this was done, it was done sort of hastily and people didn't feel like they had enough input. And so I want to make sure that we're giving this enough time to make sure that it makes sense and that we're ready to implement the new committee structure as of April, when we have new board members and we're making new committee assignments. That's the idea here.
It was done hastily, but it was done with a purpose and pushing. And we expected that there would be pushback and changes.
Hiccups, I mean, that's part of the growing process.
Planning to sort of review all that, and this is part of that, right?
Correct.
I just find it strange that HHS would be for half an hour when I know that some of their new board members, it takes a lot to learn what happens to HHS. I mean, that is a massive, big committee with very important things, so I don't know, it's just sort of shocking that they can't, because they really need to understand what's going on.
But I
that's
think
their point of being on the committee.
I believe that, a lot of that work is being done as it should be prior to those
What does that
meetings.
mean? How can the work be done prior? What's that?
When agendas go out, questions are being asked beforehand. They're getting the information that they need prior to coming into committee and making decisions. Because again, and that's part of the transition from not having an administrator to having an administrator. The committee role does significantly change when you go from having an administrator or not having an administrator to having an administrator, because that day-to-day work isn't as extensive and as intensive. Right. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing those things start to line up a little bit more, and that work is getting done ahead of time. So instead of a policy being put in front of you to write, it's being written first, put in front of you to say, recommend the changes, or do you like this? Do you want this? And that's how it should be happening. You as the board shouldn't be physically writing all the policies. We should be doing that legwork, but you should be saying to us, this is what we want in the policy. So it's those things that we're working through as we transition. And that's where I think you see some of the shortening of the meetings and those sorts of things. But again, all good discussion points. All very good discussion points. But this is the idea of where we're headed with fair and parks and recycling.
I think committee supervisors in general, AKA committee members, it behooves them to become educated in the committee matters before them. And not perhaps use the committee meetings as teaching sessions.
So I'm not against that.
Yes,
How are they gonna do that?
trying to think through it.
Okay.
And maybe you have them come in on non-meeting days and meet with the administrator or department section heads, whatever we want to call them, and talk about these
And
issues.
because it's complicated. I know most people, it takes a year or two to really be a good HHS member.
Yep.
Because you don't just come in there and understand. all
Well, and
of
they
it.
have a ton of subcommittees
Yeah.
too,
Oh,
which
I
I
know,
think
I know.
that's where a lot of this work is being done, is at the subcommittee level.
Yeah.
And that's why it's not dragging out the actual committee meeting, because they're working on a lot of this in the subcommittee level, so that when it gets here, it's not something that they haven't seen before. But, there are other options for how our meeting structure would look. That there could be a workshop day where you come in and you get all the information on all of the items that are going to be at the upcoming meeting to be voted on. I mean, there are a ton of discussions that we can have on how this could look going forward. So that's where the fair is looking to go. So, just kind of keep that on your radar. think through it. But that is the request of the people that actually sit on the committee.
And why do we have to tackle this one before we look at all committees?
Oh, we don't have to. We don't have to. It's just, it's an item that's on the forefront because they've asked for this to be worked into that plan. So that's why we're having this discussion now.
So, can I interrupt?
Yes,
So I think this is good to put this out here and I don't think we should do any action. First of all, I know it sounds, we have a quorum, but I would like to see more of the rules people here because I think this is really important. And I think it's good to lay it out now and then in January, we can maybe have even one of those meetings, like you said before, to go through this a little bit before we got this and really get down to the nitty gritty and look at it carefully. And I assume, you know, we're still having, you know, we never really went over that where we were, that survey of what people thought too. I don't know if that would, I don't know how that worked out with this.
Yeah, John has that, and I don't know if I've even
I
seen
don't
it.
think I've seen.
Because that was something we really asked for and wanted, with all the whole thing, so I don't know either.
I'm gonna ask for a motion here to state that this committee has no problem with the proposed action. However, we seek more information and we wanted to see how it fits into the whole revised committee structure. So that at least will tell the people who are requesting this change that there's no real objection from this committee so far. There may be down the road, but we want to look at it in terms of the entire committee restructuring. If anybody agrees with that and wants to second it, then we'll vote on it in that way. Will that help, Candace?
I don't even know if that's necessary, honestly, Mr.
No,
Chair.
I do.
But if
because
you feel it's necessary, then go forward. I don't think it's gonna hurt anything.
I'm thinking of Carrie. Likes answers.
Yeah.
Sure.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Wait, we haven't had a discussion.
Okay, discussion. Now we had it.
Well, did you make the motion?
I did.
Oh, okay, I didn't know it was a chair, you can, but that was,
Well, then you make it and check.
I didn't make the motion, I just wanted, I'm not, that was when I went to.
Well, that's Chad's making the motion. Will someone second it?
I'll second it.
All right, should we say there?
So what I'm confused about on the agenda is 7 and 8 look similar. Are we doing 7 or 8 or
I
both?
think we're taking them both on right now.
Just do 7 and 8 together because it's a two-piece puzzle, but
Yes.
how it was gonna work through discussion, we weren't exactly sure. So we can take 7 and 8 together because it is
Okay,
essentially,
that, I was
Same.
just clarifying because I'm confusing it. So we have one person who's the chair who wants this.
Well, Kerry was the chair of both of those committees, I believe, until they were combined. And he voiced some concern about this exact point.
Right away, I know.
Right away.
Mr. Chair, I think the motion is fine. I think it solidifies then in writing that to the members that have voiced concern that you as a committee have heard this, it's noted, and that it'll be considered upon further review of a bigger picture committee structure reorg if there is one. If there is one or if there's not one, then so be it, but.
So I'm not voting for it, I'm voting that we're gonna, that we discussed. Is that what I'm voting for?
Yeah, yeah. We're not screaming and hollering, absolutely not. We're saying, yeah, it's not a bad idea and let's consider it. But we haven't made. that
Well,
change.
I'd like you to clarify that they be subcommittees because that's confusing to me in your mouth.
Well, you can amend it by saying,
Does that make sense?
I thought you had said it.
Or-
was
yeah.
It is.
we'll look
I don't
into
think the
maybe
motion did.
So
a motion to amend fair and recycling.
Yeah.
and Parks be subcommittees.
Or can the motion read that there's a first by Chad Cosgrove for the fair recycling and parks to move under the public works oversight and for the fair recycling and the parks to be separate subcommittees? And a second by Julie at this point. Is that fair to say the motion that way?
I'm sorry, but I want to make it clear so people don't come back at us.
Mhm.
So that's why I have the motion, is that
Yeah.
agreeable with all?
Yeah.
Okay. That's how the record will state that.
Okay, so all those in favor of that motion?
Aye.
No,
No, so
we're not amending, it's all part of the major, okay. All those in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
I,
Opposed? Okay, there's a lot of things to consider, about the fair, so,
A lot,
a lot.
a lot. So, but we're working through a lot of that. right now.
It would be nice to have. It's not on the agenda, so I won't discuss it. Okay, the fair is, I will say this, though, the fair is an integral part of Richland County. And it can't be given up. You change how it's structured, and perhaps how it's, who runs it, but it's very, when you think of Richland County, you think county tech.
Sligo was more than 1950s, when you think about it.
What's that?
It's more of the face of the county in the 1950s than it is today.
The 4-H kids. Okay. Where are we? 9? We've already done, well,
No.
you want to talk?
So in your packets, you have just a little diagram of what Derek and I have kind of started piecing together. And I say starting because this is just a very rough draft of the potential of what we think could go together, what makes sense, the things that we've heard that people don't think go together. And so we kind of talked about having, rather than having finance and personnel and rules and strategic planning, going to just an executive committee that can handle those functions. Because then it's not separate committees. And with this structure, there would be more board members on each committee. One of the things we've heard is that people feel with this many committees too, there's not enough overlap and they're not interacting with one another as much. And so this would bring that in so that you as board members are interacting with one another more. And it would consolidate for our staff. It would consolidate for the members of the committees, things like that. We're trying to find that balance of streamlining, but not making it super long either. So that's kind of what we're considering in all of this and what we're hearing in feedback. So that executive committee would sort of take finance and personnel, rules and strategic planning, management information systems would then come under finance, because honestly, 9 times out of 10, MIS goes to Public Works to ask for permission, and then they have to come back to finance. And so again, it makes more sense to put them in a place where they can get the approval that they need and remove a step if we can, to make things get through committee faster, more quickly, and more efficiently. And then, of course, the clerk, the treasurer, the register of deeds, and then Simon's, because again, right now, Simon's goes to, they have their own board meeting, and then it has to go through sometimes 2 steps before it's getting to board. And the other thing is, there's been commentary because of the financial impact of Simon's, that we want to make sure that the city is clear and getting all of the information on Simon's. And this way, if it's, addressed at the executive board level, we can ensure that that information is always getting shared with the city in an appropriate manner. So we want to make sure that we're continuing that collaboration and that information sharing, and this would allow us to do that.
The Simon's board right now has both city and county.
Correct.
Members. Mayor's
So
always a member, I'm a member, and citizen members.
we're not doing questions yet. So that was my question, is how will they be there when you have
Yeah.
all that?
I mean,
And so, just for an example, Linda, recently Tracy has asked for a couple of new water heaters and a new cleaner for the pool. And she emailed me that And after having a meeting with the city and talking about this increased collaboration, I said, do you have approval from the city? And she said, no, not yet. And so I'm not going to then approve it until I know the city approves
Why
it.
didn't she go to her board?
You approved it Tuesday.
She went to her board. Her board said yes, but it still has to get approved by the people that are paying the bills. The board can't just approve it if it was a non-budgeted item. And these were two non-budgeted items.
It then go automatically to the county board and the city council.
It has to go to finance before being
Oh,
approved
because it's way more than.
because it's a non-budgeted item. Yes. So again, in the spirit of increased collaboration and more transparency, I said, did you get approval? She got approval. Now we can approve it and she can go buy what she needs. And we know that the city was along and for the ride.
Adding to that, we've come into an era of deficiencies out at Simon's, and the city has been reluctant to pay their share.
We
Yeah.
did receive that though.
And I said, we're not gonna spend any more money out there unless we know they're gonna cover it. Why wouldn't they? I mean, they owe the money, we spent the money, you know, we're writing checks, is what it amounts to.
And for example, like in the case of Simon's, if they're coming to a committee, they would probably go to finance to get something approved anyway, or it'd be some other organizational shift. So if they came directly here, that executive committee, regardless of the nature of what they're really asking for, it would fall under one of those two groups anyway, and then wouldn't have to go through two separate county subcommittees before it went to board and then through their committee, as it may be. In addition, the executive committee then has, again, there's that communication between the city and the county, because there's been scuttle that, that the city doesn't receive the information that they need, which they do. And, we've reviewed that with the city. So Candace and I have addressed that, but I think putting Simon's underneath the executive one, when I think of the executive one, I think of kind of the committees that have the ability to touch all the general operations of the courthouse, right? Which would be finance and personnel, rules and strategic planning. Those are general operations. And Simon's simply because it's a split venture with the city, right? And because there's some more oversight we need to do there. And then the elected officials, just because NMIS obviously touches everything. So I think that makes sense.
Would this take away then the Simon's?
They would have their own you'd still have the board. This would be their oversight committee. So it's not going through two different oversight committees.
Simon's would become basically a subcommittee then.
They would report to executive committee as their oversight committee. So this structure is standing committee. So we currently have 9. We'll reduce those to 5. So this way it's not going through 5 different standing committees, but literally 1. And then department heads aren't having to say, oh, it went through. It gets messy to track those sometimes.
I mean, sometimes people are going to 2 or 3 committees
Yeah.
before it can
Yeah.
go to county
Yeah.
board. And so we're just trying to streamline them.
And
So, go ahead.
Mary, this is all new to you. And does any of it make sense? Does any of it make sense?
Yes, it does. When I went to that fair and recycling, thought that was like the zoo.
It's not what?
I thought it was
The zoo.
everybody had, who are you and who are you? How do you come here?
Oh, yeah.
And then they started asking questions and people kind of got a little bit,
Hot.
Okay.
so, I was pretty new, so I kept. Yeah, I think it's good to kind of settle that down, somebody.
No.
So I understand streamlining, which is good, because especially when something's wrong and you have to run around and you're still trying to run your place and hire your people. I'm just confused because I remember being on the Simon's board, and I'm back using Simon's now. I'm swimming, there, but I was, as a county board and a city person, I was the only one from the county and the city that used the building. The community people used the building. And it was very interesting that the city and county people didn't seem to know anything about the place. And it was just a really, I just was saying, I just think that there are some people that use the building, your board need to be back on there, that subcommittee. I don't know how that's gonna work. Do you understand?
It's gonna stay just how it is.
Okay.
Yes.
So what, let's say it's still Tracy, you know, whatever you call her. She would go to the subcommittee and then she'll go to the executive.
She would only come to the executive committee when there was something that they needed. So if there was an
What does
expenditure,
the board do?
the Simon's board, they hear the day-to-day, they talk about what's gonna happen, and they make the recommendation that would then come forward to us. But again, you know, it seems as though there have been a lot of things that were just being approved and then taken straight to board, and people weren't aware of what was going on.
Yeah.
So
no,
there
I-
needs to be,
I just wasn't sure how
This-
it's getting the community people off or on or how.
no, they're staying. The only difference is now when Tracy needs something that needs to be approved financially, it'll come here to the executive committee to be approved. And you could structure it that if it comes to the executive committee, it doesn't have to go to the entire board. That can be done. You know, if it's an expenditure under X amount of dollars, it can come to this committee and then it can be done. And it doesn't have to go to board, because Derek and I are in agreement on this. We need a procurement policy as well that says if it's approved in the budget and it's not in excess of X amount of dollars, there's no reason it needs to come in front of a committee every single time. Financial reports can be given, those can be looked at. And if you have questions, you can always reach out. But again, this is part of the whole streamlining process and getting our financial house in order. So we have to take baby bites at the apple right now. And so just getting our committees in line and getting people used to communicating appropriately, I think would be that first step.
So we can, I keep running, so we could raise that 5,000 to a higher level because things have gotten much more expensive.
It's 10 right now.
Oh, it is 10.
Yeah.
It
I
is-
didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, and for certain departments, it's 50.
Yes.
Okay, I
and-
think that's good.
There's a few thresholds. There's one where if it's a non-budgeted item, well, actually, it doesn't matter if it's budgeted, $10,000 or up to $10,000, I can sign off. Anything over that then has to come to board. Some it's up to 50, just depending on the department and the level. I mean, highway, $10,000 wouldn't get them much of it. So we have some policies in place, but I think they could be better. And I think we could create efficiencies within those. So that's going to be part of this process too.
Was that part of our restructuring that we went to 10,000?
That was part of one of the amendments, the rules of the board. I don't remember when that was amended, but
Okay. Sorry,
sometime
I
before
missed
May of 20.
That's good.
You missed that.
I missed something.
Mr. Chair, I think that we've been working underneath this updated, standing committee structure now for a little while. April of 2022 is when we did the last reorg, which established the standing committees that never existed before. So I think now is a good time to look at what we've done over the last 2 years to see how that's actually working in practice versus how we thought it would on paper. And already, even from being around for some of this too, I can see that there are efficiencies we can make in the way that we do business and the way stuff goes through committee. Because, for instance, we have county board tomorrow and MIS meets on the 2 days after. And there's even, this is a part of a larger conversation with not only committee structure, but then how are the rules of the board updated and how are we going to amend different things to make all this much easier and take maybe the last step towards, okay, this is now administrative form of government versus administrative coordinator, which had all those other checks in there, right? Because you didn't have someone in the position to kind of take care of those. So this is fully warranted. I think it's great to have these conversations now because as Candace said, we have about 4 months, right, before a new session begins. And it would be very nice for that new session to have a streamlined finance policy, a streamlined personnel policy, and then a streamlined, updated, totally legal rules of the board that tell us exactly how we're going to do business. So those 3 things can be hammered out as a part of this, and we can streamline this to make it easier. I think that's big picture, right?
That's big picture
what we're
is,
trying to do.
like I keep telling Marty, we're rebuilding the foundation of how we want our governmental body to function. And not only our governmental body, but our business, our personnel policies and our financial policies. That's really the whole point of getting a HR person and a finance director is to build that base so that everybody has a very clear picture of how things should operate. Because what we've run into in the little bit of time I've been here is we've got a lot of muddy policies. And so this way, we're going to clean them up, we're going to streamline them, we're going to make them very clear, concise, easy to understand, and then build off of that. That's the whole idea here, is to really kind of taking everything back to ground zero and reestablishing based on what we've learned.
Yeah, right.
over time. So, any more questions on the executive?
I just have a general thing, but I don't know if things on the agenda, but.
Go ahead, Ms.
I'm just
Judges.
babbling, I know, but I like that we're redoing this. I find it very strange that the meetings are shorter because I found the meetings have been much longer. But it's also, a lot of us had to learn about another committee that was combined, so that was a learning thing. And when we have new people come on the board, they might have to do that too. So I don't mind that you two figured out how to streamline this. And Marty, I don't mean this as offense to you, I'm just talking about democracy. So when we choose who's on these, I think we need to go back and look at the fact that it was Marty that was choosing who was on. And it was somewhat cumbersome to have a committee on committees, but I think the board has to have some democracy in this of who's on the committees. And I don't think that should be, I'm just gonna use terms, but you might not be here forever, the county administrator, the new, so I think the board as a whole, that we need to look at that of how we're gonna choose the way we do that, and then that way the board is on board with it, is what I'm saying.
Agreed, and Derek and I have talked about that because we've heard that the last time committees were assigned, it was very, very cumbersome. It was very disorganized. It was kind of all over the place. So we have kicked around a few ideas, and so we're going to prepare a few options and bring those back then for all of you to look at and either say, I like this one, or I like this one, or can we do something in between, or whatever it might be, so that hopefully it's done in a more streamlined, organized, and time-effective manner, because I heard it took a really long time to get it done too.
Before this last time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mind the time initially organizing. I just want the board to be represented.
Mm-hmm. Yep. No.
Committee on committees.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like.
All right.
Anything else? Chad, what do you think about
With all you and President.
I think that getting finance under this executive committee, and when you talk about MIS, all MIS is bookkeeping, simply bookkeeping. So we rolled out this aura, this magic. MIS.
Well, it's become one of our biggest expenses.
Well, it touches everything, and we
right.
cannot function
Right.
without them. They are so integral to our day-to-day operation, and so I understand why they put it under Public Works, because it is infrastructure, but at the end of the day, it's money, and it touches everything, and really it's an executive function, overall, in my opinion, just my opinion.
Well, and Mr. Chair, I think we have to think about how we're going to structure committees before we think about, okay, well, how's everyone gonna pick their committee and how are we going to then do the democratic process? So to your point, Linda, I mean, this is why this conversation should start to happen now. So when it comes to making those decisions in April, whether that's a hybrid of what we've done before, something totally different, or the same thing, whatever the case may be, then that's determined, because it's hard to fill out Excel squares and check boxes if you don't know what boxes you're checking. So.
And to your credit, when you said democratic, you didn't say small d democratic. That's Don would have.
I'm not done.
All right, so just to kind of go around and review what we have left here quickly. So the other thing that seems more logical to us is having a social services committee. When we talk about the budget, we talk about social services. That is a category. And so having HHS, child support, Pine Valley, and veterans under one umbrella seems to make a lot of sense. So that's where we came up with the Social Services Committee.
We're gonna call it community services.
Oh, yes, we're gonna call it community services instead of social
Yes,
services,
right.
we decided.
Yeah.
Because that is the budget, that is the correct term. Yep. Public Works. So when you're thinking about Public Works, highway, maintenance, fair and recycling, and parks. Those are all Public Works. And then zoning. And honestly, we're talking right now about making it a land conservation / zoning office, or doing some sort of new restructure in there or something along those lines. But that would be land conservation, zoning, and extension. A lot of places when we looked around, you know, now that we won't have an education committee going forward, where does extension go? A lot of times it's put in with land conservation and zoning, and it does make sense that way. They're agricultural, so that's what we came up with. And then public safety by and large stays the same. Courts, clerk of courts, register and probate, VA, and sheriff. And so, you know, realistically, it really streamlines the number of meetings that everybody's going to be required to attend. And, you know, at the end of the day, if your meeting goes an hour and a half or 2 hours, is that better than having to come in 2 or 3 different times for 2 or 3 different meetings? So again, you know, that's the discussion that needs to be had. In Derek and I's viewpoint, just driving back and forth for 3 meetings. So what if you stay a little longer one meeting? Because then it's just saved you all that time. And again, that greater communication, the increased transparency across committees because you're sharing more. So we're trying to think about all the feedback that we've got and streamline. So this is just our first kind of jumping off point. The next page down is a schedule. And like Derek said, initially, when we were looking at it, we're trying to get it so that, and the executive committee meeting is going to have to move. We just don't know where. We initially thought, oh, on the second Tuesday, but that doesn't work because then the second Thursday we would miss social services and public works. The idea is to make sure that everything is addressed in the month that it is presented, so that if it's presented on the 1st, it is passed by the 23rd. So we're not holding things over for another month, sometimes 2, because they're trying to get through committee. And so, you know, we have a couple of options. We could move social services and public works to Tuesday and then move the executive committee to Thursday, which in my mind would probably make the most sense. And that way we get all of our meetings done in the first 2 weeks. If anything else needs to be revisited or passed or discussed prior to then getting on board, we do have a little bit of leeway and we have a little bit of time. So it streamlines it, makes it more efficient, seems to be more effective overall. But again, think about it. You know, if you've got feedback, thoughts, ideas, suggestions, please share them. This is just an initial kind of throw it at the wall to see if it sticks type thing.
And we have kind of chatted about having meetings, like a week of meetings, right, where most of the meetings happen on 1 week, and then you have the week before to prep, the meeting week, and then the week after to kind of let the dust settle and get everything ready before it goes to board. So at the point that it goes to board, everything that month, like Candace says, has been addressed, and we're not waiting on stuff like we are with the board meeting next week, because there's even HHS now, they meet like sometimes right before or right after. So it would be nice, even from just an organizational standpoint, if we're going to have less standing committees, then why can't we have 1 or 2 weeks of meetings at which everyone knows that these are meeting days? It helps you guys as supervisors, especially if new members are coming on, their availability, well, they'll kind of know what they're signing up for, because I do think that if you're going to serve as a county board supervisor, you assume the responsibility to educate and inform yourself. Your committee can do that, but there is a certain level of duty that you have to take on upon yourself to do that, right? Like, it's like a job, like you don't get paid a lot, but it's like a job, right? So there is some responsibility that we ultimately assume when we take on any duty, regardless of what that is. So it would be nice for you guys, but even just for us to coordinate stuff with departments and committees and organizationally to just move it along and I'd rather have a dreaded week of meetings or, a few days of meetings spread out, but that they're clearly defined. There's not 50 million agendas going out. We have so much stuff going on that, like Candace asked me about an agenda this morning. I'm like, yeah. Oh yeah, I did see that agenda, but there's 50 of me. There's so many coming through. So it would be nice just to collect ourselves into one central ball of.
And the other piece that we don't have on here, and I kind of mentioned it. So in the prior structure that I came from, we had 2 board meetings a month and one, it was called a workshop. John says in Wisconsin, it's called a committee of the whole. It's basically where everyone gets together to talk about anything that's going to be on the board meeting, right? Or any of the big items, big changes, something new, whatever. And, there is the potential then that week of the 15th through the 19th, that 3rd week or whatever, we could schedule a committee of the whole meeting where it's a preview so that when the meeting night comes, at 7 PM, we're not there for 3.5 or 4 hours because you can't take any action in a committee of the whole meeting. It's informational only. It's time to discuss, ask questions, get all that done so that when you walk into the meeting, then realistically, you kind of know where you're at. And if you want to say something on the record, you can do that. Absolutely do that. But and so that's another option we have. Not saying we have to do it, not saying we shouldn't do it. It's just an option that's out there. And so there is a little bit of time where that could happen too under this sort of an organizational. And I got the idea for this. So I've done a lot of research on other committee structures and how they look. And I've listened to Andy Phillips a few times on webinars and different things. And La Crosse County went to this format about 18 years ago. And it has worked extremely well for them. And it has stood the test of time. And La Crosse County is a far bigger county than us. And so if they can make it work, I think we can make it work. So
Andy Phillips is the attorney that works with the Wisconsin Counties Association, knows everything about state government and county.
Yeah.
And has always been very gracious. It's paid by the Counties Association, but very, very forthcoming with information for us. So.
Yep. So yes.
I kind of think that sounds really good, that where you can discuss it before you go into it, because when you're new like I am, you don't always know.
Well, and you don't ask questions, do you? You bite your tongue. You think, I'd like to know more about that, but I don't want to hold up the process.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
know, like other things.
Well, and the beauty of it, I guess I would say too, is if we decide to have a committee of the whole, if you don't want to come, you don't have to come. I mean, realistically, it's not
Well,
like.
no action will be taken. So
Right, no action would be taken. So again, I mean, that's where that's at. I mean,
And to facilitate that, we would have to have a streamlined structure that's very defined with meetings to make sure that that committee and the whole meeting would then be worthwhile. And you're actually looking at the items you're going to approve, and that would be kind of,
Yep.
That's it. That's what you're
Would have to
doing
be
and
an
not,
agenda.
yeah, right.
Right.
Right,
It
it's basically your agenda.
it would mirror the board agenda,
Yes, correct.
anything that was coming up on the upcoming board meeting. And that way, anybody who wanted to know more.
Yep.
Would let us know, or if there are specific items, we can make sure the department head is
Yep.
available to answer questions, those sorts of things. So, in our workshops, every department head that had anything on the agenda, and often even those that didn't, would come. Because that's how they stayed in touch. That's how they knew what was going on in the rest of the county.
And I think it's very interesting as long as it's not on Oak Island night. Great.
But anyway, again,
Oak Island.
it's a show. There are treasure hunting shows.
I
So,
was making a joke.
so anyway,
I just want to make a few comments. As far as having that discussion night, I think that's great, because sometimes there's things we talk about in the full board meeting that I'm not on that committee. So I don't have all the background that maybe some other people have. And, you read through the documents, but you still have questions and you like that background information first. So I think having that would be very beneficial.
okay.
The questions I do have is, when is the new board meetings for the new year? Because right now they're the third Tuesday, right? And is it switched to the fourth? Because you kind of kept referencing the 23rd, which is the fourth.
Oh, well, that was my fault. It's the 6th. No, it's always the third Tuesday. I was
Okay.
just looking
Okay,
at it.
that's why I was
It's gonna be
confused
the
there.
fourth Monday.
No.
And then you talked about having, like, if the meeting was the 16th, the finance or the executive meeting on the Thursday, I know some of those things have to meet a certain number of days prior to the board meeting. So I guess I don't know which ones those are, because I know they always talk about the 10 days before the board meeting.
Zoning,
That's only zoning.
zoning,
Okay.
Yep.
Which is why the zoning is.
Is always first.
Okay.
correct. So
Okay.
everything else doesn't have
Doesn't-
that timeline, which would be
Stipulation, okay.
and realistically, I mean, there's a potential that if we did the executive meeting on Thursday, we could do a committee of the whole on Fridays or during the day, or on that Monday prior to the board meeting during the day. I think La Crosse does it the Monday prior to the board meeting, or they meet on Thursday, they do it the Tuesday before,
And there's some
but
benefit to having day meetings.
Yeah.
Because then you can
That's gonna
get
be my question.
The department.
employees.
Yep.
Would that also be, where people could, if they are not available during the day, would it be available to be recorded so people could, board
So-
members could watch it?
So here's, and this is just, again, my prior experience for those types of meetings. Board members like to be able to speak freely. And if it's recorded and it's put out to the public, they don't always. And so our workshops were recorded, but not streamed. So if somebody really did want to get them, they could request them, but it wasn't live streamed and it wasn't, just posted.
That makes sense, because like not everybody is able to come during the day.
Yep.
You know, all the time there, they maybe struggle to get there during other days, but just to have it where, like myself, I might not be able to come to those, but I really want to hear the discussion. So as long as I could
And I don't
get
see,
that link to listen to it.
I guess I don't really see why we couldn't at least create a Zoom link just for board members.
Yeah, and it could be sent as an email, so if you wanted to listen to it, you could click on the link. If you didn't want to, then.
Yep. And those are all details we could work through for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Link is for board members. Sure.
Okay, and then my other question is back to that previous slide, where you got the 5 committees.
Yep.
How many people were you anticipating on each of these boards? And then how many committees would each of the board members be assigned to?
We're not quite there yet.
We're not quite there yet because one of the things I'm doing right now is researching which of our committees are and subcommittees are mandatory statutorily and what are the statutory makeup requirements. That's how I figured out that our health board is illegal because we have too many members on our health board. So I've been reaching out to department heads saying, can you tell me, can you get me this information so that we know? But that also ties in with kind of the next item on our agenda, which is we are going to be working with Andy Phillips. Finance and Personnel blessed me reaching out to Andy Phillips to see if he would assist us in rewriting our board rules and looking over our personnel policies, because he is the expert. And if we really want to do it right and do it right the first time, we may as well do it. And so they've blessed that. So I'm going to be, Derek and I are going to be reaching out to him. Attorney Wendell is on board with this. I spoke with Mike prior to the meeting yesterday because I didn't want him to feel like I was stepping on his toes, but he's in agreement and he's the man. So let's use that knowledge and that resource that we have to build the best base we can. And so we need to establish, there are certain committees, there are certain things that require a specific number of people from very specific demographics. Often that's the subcommittees. So, I mean, just simple math, if there's 21 board members and 5 committees, everybody's going to be on 4 and 1 or 2 people are going to be on 5. And then how we select, you know, like right now, the executive committee is elected by the other 4. So that kind of takes care of that. But again, we're working through that too. As we get that information, it'll help us to determine, you know, how we do those things. It's like a giant puzzle right now, trying to find all the pieces and how they're going to fit and how best to shake it all out.
Yeah, I would think that, you know, the first piece of that puzzle is to review how we've organized ourselves, compare how it's working, you know, to what we did in 2022 to make that different, determine what we need for standing committees in conjunction with what Andy Phillips would say from WCA as far as what we need for those committees, and really figure out, okay, these are the committees that we have to have. And then how do we staff them would be, and then how do we do the process of staff them would be one of the last things. But I think.
And I would say this initial stab at the organization is really based off of a lot of the feedback that we've heard about what isn't working or what doesn't seem to make sense about the way we were organized the previous time.
4 years ago, the county underwent a major change, going from the coordinator type of government, which was simply at that time, the county clerk was designated the coordinator, to an administrator type of government. And I remember when I first got on the board, Janetta Kirkpatrick explained to me, the work of the county is done in committees. And I said, huh? Isn't there an overall head, like an employee of the county, if they have a problem, where do they go? No, there isn't. So that to me was strange when I first walked in from private industry. We had a president at American Family and an executive. Anyway, so a major change 4 years ago. Clint came in, first thing that happened was COVID hit. So we spent a year and a half dealing with that, or 2 years, and never really got. But finally, then 2 years ago, when we reorganized, and Clint took a stab at reorganizing, and you know, it's for a first attempt, and not everybody was happy. He squeezed some committees together, trying to make fewer committees. Some of it made sense, some of it didn't make sense, some of them got subsumed and became ineffective, maybe. So now we're 4 years down that administrator route. And Clint's gone. Candace is here. She has experience at another county, another state. State will remain nameless, but so this is her cut at it, and I think it's very good. So I'm in support of these changes. I'm not totally against them. But just to give you some perspective, I guess. I'm teaching here. I try to teach when the chairman, Julie, when you don't understand something, it's your duty or your right to ask the board chair to explain it or get an explanation. And if I don't do that, I'm sorry, I apologize.
No, I ask questions when I need to.
You do.
Good about asking questions. Sometimes I
Very.
forget.
Since you're in the mood, I don't quite understand, standing, you refer to standing committee, and does that mean the county board and other people, or how does the
In
standing,
case you don't get chairs, we have to stand.
standing?
Keeps the
committee?
meetings short. No, that's, what is the standing
They're
committee?
just the main.
The main.
Yeah.
committee.
Your main
The
committee.
county board and the heads.
No, it's not the county board, it's each committee is a standing committee.
Oh.
So
Why, like a manager then?
composed of the county board. So your county board composes those 5 major committees, and those 5 major committees are the committees in which all the other subcommittees report to, right? So it's like a reporting committee, if you will.
All right, I
They're
got
the
it.
5 major organization, as you see up
And
there.
generally speaking, a standing committee, because people know what day it's gonna meet.
Yes.
And it's always the same day, like county board is the third Tuesday. A standing committee would be etched somewhat in sandstone, maybe, so we can write it out.
So, recycling under public works and all that, that's a lot of people to have a meeting. Like public works, gonna have fair and recycling, because there were a lot of people at that fair and recycling meeting.
But they always they wouldn't be at the standing committee, all those people.
Oh, okay, all
The
right.
subcommittee would come,
They have.
my way of thinking, on a reporting basis.
Correct.
If they needed to be there, they would be, but otherwise they wouldn't.
Yeah, there could be a time when like the public works agenda only has highway stuff on it and nothing else, because there's no, there's nothing that they would need to approve. So it just really depends on the
Would-
nature.
Then would they be counted in the quorum? Probably not. Would they have a vote? Probably not. So,
Well, the committee members would still be there. I'm saying the subcommittees, like,
yeah.
that public works isn't always gonna have all those items, so that meeting may only consist of one, like, department being there, unless we're gonna structure where they do reports and stuff like that too, which we're not there yet, but.
Right. Good thought, though. My thought, too.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay, yes.
I have
Ms.
lots of
Dennis.
questions and.
Lots? Don't say lots.
I do,
See, that's
but
good.
they're not in order of priority. I just wrote them down because I was just at a talk about paying attention, and you're not supposed to form your question while somebody's talking, so I try to write them down and listen. Okay, one is, and I don't want to don't answer all these at once. I'm just gonna get them out there. I think you're right about switching those meetings so the executive is after the other one.
Okay.
And I know the staff doesn't like meeting at night, but two things about new people coming on. One is, I think we would get a lot more younger people and people who are really, you know, we want to get in this community, and it'd be good if we were having 5 o'clock meetings or something. That would be just an idea to me. The other thing is, people have been asking me about coming on the board, and I've been telling them that the board night is gonna change. So if it's not gonna change and people are signing up to run for the board, I think that needs to be made pretty clear before January, because some people won't run if it's gonna not be changed to Monday night.
So that one I will just, if you don't mind, stop and address.
Yeah,
So what happened was, when we kept seeing the puzzled look on all the board members' faces about when did we vote this and what,
we did.
The change night.
you voted against it. You all voted against it. It was a 0 to 19 vote. And what happened was, someone sent out an email directing that all the rules then be changed after the meeting, in which that did not pass. So we have been operating under incorrect board rules for a period of time, under the assumption that our meetings were going to change. And however, they're not going to change because the board voted it down.
Okay, I don't mind that they don't change. I just want people to know.
Correct. So,
So there's a resolution, I think it's 22-147, in which it says it wasn't adopted. And as Candace said, people started to ask about this. So I just went through to look at the resolution. So I'm like, well, there's a resolution for it. And it said resolution not adopted. And I'm like, wait, hold up, not adopted. So then I went back to listen to the recording. And I think at that point there was, city council used to have their meetings on the first and third Tuesday. So I think there was discussion about trying to accommodate that so people could do both. And then if you listen to the recording, you'll clearly hear it. So.
Okay, well, that's fine. I'm just trying to make sure people know.
Yep.
And then I just want us to consider night meetings, and once a month, if a staff member has to stay from 5 to 7:30, I don't know. That's up to other people to discuss. That's just something I want to put out there. And, I don't see on here something that, I know there's other committees that we're all on, library and all that kind of, there's more committees than just these standing committees, Mary. But you mentioned, and I don't know if it should be a major committee, Marty, you've been mentioning for years that there should be, and I don't see that Public Works, unless maybe it's gonna be defined, that we don't have a real building committee, someone who's, really, I don't know if that should be a 6th committee. That's just something, I'm just throwing that out.
that is under Public Works now. Anything building related goes through Public Works.
Okay, because it's not written down that way yet.
Okay, so
you
just
need to
define it.
Write that and define that, because that is important, I think, that we get all the buildings somehow taken care of and that, okay.
That makes sense, Linda. Thank you.
I don't mind having that meeting of everybody, but I want to go back to the question, and this I would like an answer. I was under the impression that, and that's why I thought that if you were really want to know details about something, you learned everything about your committee, and you learned everything about land conservation. I mean, and zoning, and when you're on HHS, you know all about where every finance and all those things, and so when it came to the board meeting, Mary, you totally trusted that the resolution had been totally gone through and that the committee had done it. So I hardly ever have voted against a committee proposal because I trusted the committee. So so the meeting of the whole isn't bad, but I don't know for sure what the role of the supervisor is to be in the future, so that why would I come on and what would I be doing to contribute? Do you see what I don't know whether that's a committee or the whole. I don't want to be someone that just stamps approval, but I don't want to be a negative person all the time. You understand that?
I think the committee work is still very important because,
Yeah.
you know, again, the difference, the nuances there, before you would have to take a policy and line by line, go through and rewrite it because you didn't have somebody to do that. Now you have staff, and that's all about trusting your department heads, trusting your administrator, assigning them, okay, this is what we want to see, giving them direction, and then allowing us to take that direction, formulate something for you and bring it back and say, is this what you were thinking? So you're still going to then go through it and say, I like this, I don't like this, whatever. So yes, you still need to be educated. You still need to participate because at the end of the day, every decision ultimately that's really made about major effective things is at the board level. I can't make those decisions. Derek can't make those decisions. That is up to you as board members. That's why oftentimes you'll hear me when I come to you, I will say, well, there's this option, and there's this option. Which way do you want to do it? Because that's really my job, is to present you with options. And then if I have an opinion or you want my recommendation, it's my job to give it. It's a department head's job to give it. And so, yes, you still do need to learn and you still actively, absolutely participate. It's just that you don't have to get into the trenches now and actually do the work of formulating those things, because that's why you have switched the form of government that you're functioning under. But policy making and policy setting is still only the function of the board. Yes, absolutely. Derek, anything to add?
Yeah, well, to kind of piggyback off that, I think, you know, at a committee level, I think this is something that we need to just work on as even just department heads and things like that, is when you're taking something to a committee, the resolution that you just mentioned to be approved that goes to county board, that should also be wordsmithed at the committee. That should be the final kind of declaration from the committee taking it to board. And that doesn't always happen sometimes, right? Those resolutions get written after a committee meeting or whatever, but they should be, and I've mentioned this, and I don't know if people are gonna like me when I say this, but it's my thought that if you're taking something to county board, then your committee should draft that resolution and you approve that exact resolution as it is, and that gets given to me to go on the board agenda. And that's, you know, as Candace said, if you do that at the committee meeting, then you should really have all the information and feel good enough, you know, or confident enough to vote on that bottom of the resolution like you do to approve it, because remember, you just have to sign them and all those things. So there are those organizational things that can be hammered out a little more too. We're just not there yet, but that would ensure then that every committee member is informed, that you have all the information to write the resolution and you're confident at board when you approve it.
Or that you go to the corp council.
Correct. Yes, yeah, right.
So
Yes.
that's hard to get that written before the committee meeting. I mean, and then I guess that just dawned on me because previously, before you were here, Candace, we didn't really have the administrator always come to every meeting, standing meeting. So if we're going to be writing these resolutions and you're going to be doing, you would have, because it seems like you have a lot of things you need to be doing, and I didn't know if you needed, I don't know how that works.
Sure. And I mean, typically right now we have the department head draft it. And realistically, I think that would still work. Draft a
Yep.
resolution. Then when they bring it to you in committee, you look over that resolution and say, we're comfortable with this, or we would like to see this added into that resolution for clarification or whatever. I mean, and Mike Wendell does a good job. A lot of times we do get resolutions that have way too much information in them. The resolution isn't supposed to have all the information. It's supposed to have the basics, because all the information is what's in the packet. And so again, it's about learning where those boundaries are and what should be where and what needs to be part of the formal record and those sorts of things. But, you know, yes, I have made a point to come to all standing committees. I think that that's my job. You know, I know that there are administrators that only go to the executive committee, but I want to support my departments and I want to support my department heads and I want to support the board. And if I don't know what's happening all over the place, then I don't feel like I can do that adequately. I'm definitely not a micromanager. I don't tell people what to do. I don't get in their business, but if they need help, I'm there. I've been the fair coordinator now for a while. I'm helping with the ambulance committee right now and the ambulance service. I'm soon to be helping in the zoning office a little bit. I feel like that's my job to make sure we're still functioning correctly. So yes, that's why I'm at the committee. But would I come and write every resolution? No. Nope, that's for the department head to do and for you all to bless.
And Corp Council does review them. They're all sent to
Yes.
Mike to review. So most of the time there's nothing major.
Yeah, by the
that's all
time
we
you
do.
see them, he has typically
Yeah.
already reviewed them. But if you wanted changes made, we'd make those changes and send them to him again.
If I may just correct myself, I gave you a wrong resolution number. So the resolution number you should refer to for the meeting or the changing of the meeting dates is 22-102. And if you listen to the September 20th, 2022 board meeting at about the 1 hour, I think in 32 mark, you'll hear a roll call vote. So just full disclosure, gave you the wrong number, but listen to that meeting and
You should have seen Derek's face when he came in. It's like, oh my gosh. And I said, okay, well, let's fix it. So.
Was that?
there was an email sent to MIS to update the rules of the board with the change, with the change being in there when it wasn't adopted. And then those were, posted on the website.
Yeah.
When you look at the minutes for that resolution that you're talking about,
Mhm.
in the packet for the next month where it shows everything, at the bottom of that resolution, it states in there, the motion was by Rudersdorf, second by Glassbrenner, and it said, the motion carried and the resolution declared adopted. It's right in the minutes.
Of October?
Sure, that's where I'm at.
October 2022?
I'm sorry, it's September 20th, it's December 20th meeting that had happened at the county board meeting. So I'm looking at where you go into the packet for the September 20th. Or the meeting, the minutes.
Are you looking at the finance and personnel one, Julie? Because it was adopted in finance.
It was
Look at the
adopted.
county board. So it's the county board meeting for September 20th of 22. If you click on the link that says minutes, then it goes in and it shows
Okay,
the
so-
minutes for that. If you scroll down to that resolution, it says at the bottom of it that it was adopted.
So the official minutes for the 9/20/2022 county board meeting.
Yep.
Let me get to resolution 10222. It says resolution not adopted in the official minutes I have on record for resolution 22-102.
If you go down to the bottom of it, where it has the resolution at the top, 22-102, this is in the minutes.
I'm looking at the minutes.
Yeah, and then you scroll down to that, so it'd be page 19 of 22. And then you'll see that's where it says the resolution. And on there it says it was adopted.
That's for the resolution 22-103. That's for the one above it. 22-103, 22-103. That's for. this
Oh,
resolution.
you're right. Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I was just like, "God, I've looked at that 15 times."
Lot, but you never know.
Okay.
Okay. We're off topic, but anyway.
Okay, so we should go back to number 10. We've kind of touched on it, but.
Yep.
Just,
So number 10 is the Andy Phillips. And so,
Finance has already given you.
yep, finance has given us, so I don't know, many of you may know, but some of you may not. I unfortunately have to be out for surgery, an unexpected surgery. So December 22nd, I will be having surgery, which is super fun. And so I will be working remotely for probably 10 to 12 days. My doctor has cleared me to do that. I just can't be moving around a lot. So during that time, I am going to obviously be answering emails and talking to Derek regularly, but I will also be jumping onto the policy rewriting train because that gives me an opportunity to not have so many interruptions and really hammer out some of the changes that I want to make. I have a good template for personnel policies that I would like to plug our information into, a procurement policy that more clearly defines how our financial practices could go. My prior finance director was a state auditor, so I have a really good basis to start from. And so hopefully by the time I'm fully functional again, I will have draft policies for us. So
You have to take it easy so you get fully functional, so.
I will sit. I won't. Thank you. I appreciate that you've all been
I
very,
mean that.
people have been very gracious about my recovery. So I'm going to, hopefully I'll be in Minnesota probably for about a week, and then I will be back here recovering in my apartment. And I've had several department heads offer to do anything from cooking to doing dishes to bringing me things to sign. So I am very supported, which is wonderful. And then I will come back slowly, but you know, as I can to make sure I heal well and all of that good stuff. But yeah, so I hope to have, by the end of January, I hope to have some draft policies that we can start digging into.
Future agenda items. Obviously.
Did we skip 10 or is that what we just?
we'll get
That's what
to
we were just,
It's okay. It's okay with me.
Finance told her to go ahead and do it. She's telling us here that
Yeah.
it's gonna happen.
that Andy's gonna help out, which is
No,
gonna be
that's good.
amazing. Yes.
She had kind of talked.
Yeah. Okay.
Future agenda items.
I think we have a lot.
Yeah, I think a lot of these are gonna carry over.
And, get more, I don't know, look at that survey. I don't know, that survey talked about how we want to do the committee structure. I mean, we need to get the board's involvement, not just this committee, you know, on that.
Oh, absolutely. This was just kind of the jumping off.
No, this is good. I just,
Are you wanting that as a future agenda item?
Yeah.
Results of that survey?
yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I meant.
yeah, Derek and I will reach out to John and see.
Okay. Everyone here is running for their seat again except for Linda.
You're running again?
Anybody else?
No one said anything to me, no. I mean, they could have printed them online, but, I have paper copies in the office.
I have my papers.
Yeah, okay,
I
good,
was just curious if anybody else pulled.
Not for me. Julie, you have yours?
I successfully recruited a candidate. Webster District 11. Brought her in this morning. She got signed up, Michelle Harwick.
Who is it?
Michelle Harwick.
Great. I know people have been working on it, but I haven't been.
She runs the Genuine Telecom office.
I have to go there this afternoon to get a new battery for the automatic thing.
Hello?
Tell her congratulations. Hello? Dialed you by mistake.
Wasn't a bug dial.
Oh, I didn't mean that either, so you can see me, right?
No.
I normally make it so people can't see me.
Is he talking to his wife?
Bye.
Bye.
You talked to her twice in one day?
Oh, that was Michelle,
Oh,
I think.
oh, jeez.
Gosh. Mystery. All right. Anything else? Future agenda.
I moved to approve.
That's it. You want to adjourn?
To adjourn.
You didn't have a half-hour farewell address you wanted to make?
I'm not leaving till March.
Well, I know, but
And I'm not gonna have one.
I've already sat through one of Don's.
I am not done. Why do you keep referring to me?
You're not done. Neither am I.
I think we've all had a few phone calls, but I am not listening to those.
Sue had to take him to Veterans Hospital yesterday because he's fallen a lot in the last several days.
I know,
Sound good.
we got a lot of problems.
Okay, motion to adjourn. Second,
I'll second.
all those in favor? Aye. Yes,
I
we are adjourned.
think he's calling.